plus 2.5 to upset Arizona State. I was very unimpressed with Arizona State on Saturday night. They cost me, though, because I had Wyoming covering, and obviously, as you saw by the score, Arizona State won, but they only won 28-7, which leads me to believe that one of these next couple of weeks they will get upset by somebody, and I think they're going to get upset by Mississippi State. Next, I've got South Carolina twice because I've got another show that I'm doing after this, and I have the over-under for that game. But I think Kentucky will get upset by South Carolina. And the point spread is South Carolina plus 6.5 to upset Kentucky. Because all I've heard all offseason is how Kentucky's ready for South Carolina. I don't think Kentucky's ready for South Carolina in Lenore Sellers. I don't. And then my last upset is North Carolina State plus 8 to upset Tennessee. I tell you why. Nico is one of my – I'm going to spoil that right now. He's one of my players to watch for week 2. I watched that game. I was not impressed at all because it was against the FCS team. Do that against real competition. And that's what Tennessee's got this week. And then you go next.
I have 3 also. I'm going to start with Army over FAU. Again, Army is in the American now. They joined this year. They don't, it's hard to prepare for the triple option offense. So I think Army has a slight advantage going up against FAU. The other two, this might be far-fetched to say this, but I have USF over Alabama. I was at the game last Saturday when we beat Bethune-Cookman. I didn't get there till like almost the end of the second quarter, but by the time that I got there, they were up 28-0. But if they play as good as they did last week, they only gave up 17 points last year to Alabama, and that was with Nick Saban as their head coach. So I think this is a good time for USF to catch Alabama. And the other one, and my co-host is really going to hate me for saying this, Michigan upsets Texas. The Wolverines are going to beat the Longhorns on Saturday.
I don't hate that upset. And you'll see why when we do our picks against the spread here in a minute.
Okay.
Let's get to that. My first one is actually, and these are all these picks against the spread I'm doing are, of course, teams that are the underdog. And my first one, you just talked about how it's an upset. I think Michigan plus 7.5 to cover the spread against Texas. I think Texas is going to win this game, even though it's in Ann Arbor, because Michigan fans, you might want to cover your ears. And this is all out of love. Y'all need to figure out your quarterback situation. You can't go through the whole season playing 2 quarterbacks. As an Ohio State fan, we tried that a couple years ago. It did not work. So I hope Sharon Moore figures out who his quarterback's going to be. Because if he doesn't, Michigan's in for a long season. My second pick I have against the spread is Tulane, an American Athletic Conference team, plus 10 to cover against Kansas State. Now, I don't think this is a rivalry game, but it's a big time out of conference game. And I like Tulane to cover the spread here, but it's at K-State. I believe. No, it's at Tulane, but I think Kansas State wins, but I think Tulane will cover the spread. And then my last pick against the spread. Yes, I'm going back to the well again. I'm taking Michigan State +8 to cover the spread against Maryland. I'm sorry, I don't trust Maryland to cover here or win. I like Michigan State. I know they looked horribly awful against Florida Atlantic last week on Friday. I ended up watching some of that game. Aiden Childs looks really good. Now you go.
I'm going to go, but I have this one as an upset pick, but I can't do that because I'm going to take SMU over BYU. The Mustangs are a 10.5-point favorite. I will take that all the way across the board. I think they're going to cover. And I also believe the over-under is 55.5. I'll take the over because I think both those teams can put points on the board. But I like SMU. They're 2-0, and then they're in a new conference in the ACC. I like that one. The other ACC matchup I like is Duke is an underdog to Northwestern. I'm going to take the Blue Devils. They're only a 2.5-point underdog, but I'm going to take Duke on the road. Yeah, I'm going to take Duke on the road.
Yeah, I'm going to say this before we go to over-under. Mm-hmm. I was very unimpressed with Northwestern. I turned on the Miami of Ohio Northwestern game because, as you know, last week I had Miami as an upset pick.
Yes, you
Miami
did.
of Ohio. Yeah, ugly. It was 3-3 going into halftime. And then I turned it off. I'm like, there's no way I can watch a game that is this boring. Okay, so my over-under picks. My first one is UTSA and Texas State. The total is 63.5. I think that there will be a lot of points scored in this game. And I think if I'm a betting man, I'm taking the over 63.5 easily. Next one I've got is, of course, as most people know, this is a game I'm going to be at in the press box. Marshall and Virginia Tech. The the total has been moving throughout the week. It was 47.5. Now it's up to 50, and I'm going to say something after we're done with over-under picks about Virginia Tech that I didn't realize until I looked at the roster. But I like the over in the Virginia Tech Marshall game, 50.5. I don't think that's too many points to ask for. And then the last one, and this is a game that's at 10, I believe it's at 10:30 at night. It is Air Force and San Jose State. Over under, the total is 45.5. It's a military school playing a school from California. I am sad to say this. I don't think they get to 45.5 points. Because, of course, Air Force, I think they run the triple option.
I think so. I think them and Army are the only two that I still run it. Yeah.
I mean, Navy kind of runs it, but they're trying to
get away from it.
Yeah, get away from it. But I think it's going to be extremely low scoring. And it might even be, as I like to call it, a snooze fest. You might want to just turn it off and go to sleep. Sorry to all your Air Force and San Jose State fans. But before we get to the next segment, we are going to briefly cover Virginia Tech. And I'm going to say this. I didn't realize Virginia Tech's top two quarterbacks were out last week against Vandy. Kyron Jones was out and the backup was out, so they were starting Colin Schlee. And I stand to think that's maybe why they lost to. And Vandy fans, you can poke fun at us all you want. I'll take it. Because I already get poked fun at for some of the picks I make. I'll take it on the shoulder. I was wrong. We both said that Virginia Tech was going to win last week.
Correct.
Mistakes happen, injuries happen, and I think that's part of the reason why Virginia Tech lost, and they probably undervalued Vandy.
Well, but that's why a lot of people say that USF beat Syracuse last year in the Boca Raton, because they were on their third string quarterback too. But yeah, I mean, when you're Vanderbilt had nothing to lose. Let's just put it to you that way. They know every game they go out and play. If they win, they win. If they lose, oh well. No one's counting on them. They're not going to be favored to win an SEC championship anytime in the near future. But yeah, so I mean, if you're on your third string quarterback, it's hard because I'm sure that he probably didn't get a lot of reps in practice before the game. So, and even if he did, it's a playbook. You have to learn it on the fly, and some people can do it, some people can't. So, I mean,
the other thing I think is Shalee was also a transfer. I think he might have been at Cal last year.
Okay.
And I think they probably wanted to maybe redshirt him because I think Drones I think this might be Kyron Drones' last season. But yeah, that would probably explain why they lost. But now let's get to our bold predictions. And I will let you go first.
Okay. I have 4 that I had. First one, it has to do with my boys in Gainesville. Billy Napier is already on the hot seat as it is anyway. And if they go out and let's say they struggle or just barely beat Sanford this week, he will be fired before we get to week 3. I think he's already on his way out. I watched some of the game. I was at the Tampa Bay Rays game. For people that don't know, I live in the Tampa Bay area in Florida. I was at the Rays game watching the Hurricane Florida game on TV. I went back and watched the highlights. When you hear boos in the swamp, you don't hear that very often. So if they don't come out and absolutely annihilate him, I think he's gone. Another hot seat is in Tallahassee, and that is with Coach Norvell. They laid another egg last night against Boston College.
I think his hot seat is starting to heat up. It's not burning hot yet, but it's getting up there.
And they were cheering for the backup quarterback in the third quarter of that football game last night. So they don't like DJ either. They want him out of there too. So for all my Seminole fans out there, yeah, your coach is on the hot seat as much as mine is in Gainesville. The other 2 that I have is I expect the Bulls to show up against Alabama. Guys, I am not saying right now they're going to beat Alabama. I think USF will go out and show the country the team that they are, the team that is moving forward, the way that this program is playing. I think that they are going to keep it close. Who knows? I mean, anybody going on any given Saturday. So who knows? But
weird things happen.
Right. I think one of the players, and we will get into the players to watch, is quarterback Byron Brown. We'll talk about him later on in the show. And my bold prediction, it really isn't really a bold prediction. Well, I guess it is. Can someone please tell me why, or argue with me why Georgia is not the best team in the country right now? Because I don't think anyone right now, after what they did to Clemson on Saturday, can prove and tell me that they're not the best team in the country right now.
That's another thing I get slacked on for, is how much I'm not going to say degrade Georgia, but how much I just despise them, because obviously they're in the SEC. And most of the time they play the cupcake non-conference schedule. But let me get to my bold predictions. My number 3 bold prediction, and it's the game I'm going to be at. I think Virginia Tech wide receiver Allie Jennett Ollie Jennings goes for 150 yards against Marshall. I watched some of the tape from Marshall's first game, which started late because, of course, there was bad weather in West Virginia, just like there is around the whole United States this time of year. Marshall's defense looked, at times it looked good, but their secondary is extremely young. And I think Virginia Tech, if they want any chance to beat Marshall, I think they're going to have to throw the ball, and Jennings is going to be the main receiver. My number 2 bold prediction, and I just talked about this game in my picks against the spread. I think Michigan State upsets, and you can laugh at me all you want in the comments. I think Michigan State's going to upset Maryland. And then Mike Locksley's hot seat ends up heating up even more. And I did a community poll on it on YouTube a couple weeks ago. And I just got a comment on it today from somebody saying that, why is Locksley on the hot seat? He's got Maryland going in the right direction. And I understand that. But to an extent, you only get a certain number of years before the athletic department and the boosters have said, oh, do we want to keep this guy or see it bye? We're going to hire somebody new. And then my last bold prediction is I think Peyton Thorne, and I know I dogged on him. He was a Michigan State quarterback at one point. I think he throws for 400 yards against Cal this weekend. Call me crazy, but I think he throws for 400 yards. Auburn beats Cal. And Auburn fans, you can dog on me all you want. I dropped you out of my rankings, even though you were impressive against Alabama A&M. Now we're going to get to the second segment of the show. And we are going to talk about our players to watch for week number 2. And my co-host will give his first, and then I'll chime in with not necessarily whether I agree and then I'll go after.
All right, so I've got some groups and then some individual players. I have 3 players all in the same game. I have the Michigan running backs, Caleb Mullings and Donovan Edwards against the Texas defense. Again, Michigan depends a lot on the run. Obviously, that's what they depend on. And with, like you said earlier, if you're switching out quarterbacks, yeah, that means the passing game is not really going to be solidified. Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback, going against that defense in Michigan. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting.
I'm going to say this. Everybody's all I've heard from Michigan fans before the season and week 1 is Donovan Edwards is a number 1 running back. He proved to me last week that he's not a number 1 running back. He all but solidified. He's a good running back, but he's not a bell cow. He's in the same situation that Ohio State's running backs are in.
I have the 2 quarterbacks from SMU. I talked about SMU beating BYU, Kevin Jennings and Preston Stone. Look out for them. I mentioned Byron Brown, the quarterback from USF, against the Bama defense. And then I have the whole triple offense against FAU. I mentioned that earlier when we were making picks about how I think that's going to cause the FAU defense to be on their toes this week coming up. So.
Oh, we forgot game picks. We'll do it after we do our top 8 games. But let me get to my players to watch. I have 3, and they're all individuals. My third player to watch is freshman wide receiver Cam Coleman from Auburn. I watched some of their game against Alabama A&M. it is insane how fast Cam Coleman is. His burst off the line of scrimmage is, you blink, there's a good chance that you're going to miss him. Number 2, Grayson McCall, North Carolina State. And I know North Carolina State struggled against Western Carolina.
Yes.
I believe they struggled for a little bit, but then they got it going, and I'm scared to change my pick in the ACC. I'm keeping an eye on North Carolina State, and if Va Tech keeps struggling, I might have to change who I think is going to win the ACC, and I don't want to. And then my last player to watch is Jalen Daniels from Kansas. They play Illinois this week, and I stand to think that Kansas is going to put a beating on Illinois. And now we are going to get 2 game picks, which we were supposed to do in the first segment, but we got.
Can I say one thing about the ACC, Bud? We were talking earlier about which ACC team will make the college football playoff. I hate to say this, but it might be Miami. It might be Miami.
That's the other thing I was going to say. Miami might be for real.
Yeah, well, and I'll get to see them in a couple weeks as they're at Raymond James Stadium to play the Bulls in week 4. So I'll get to see them up close and personal. Yep.
Here's our game picks. We're going to start in the ACC, and the way this works is we pick the winner of 3 games from the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, and then 1 from the SEC and 1 from the AAC. So we're going to start in the ACC, and we're going to start with BYU and SMU. You mentioned earlier how you like the total in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads me to believe that you're going to take SMU.
I am, but yes, I like them. Since moving out of the American to the ACC, they're transitioning well. There are some teams that don't transition well to a new conference. So far, they've done pretty well. So yes, I'll take the Mustangs.
I'm also going to take SMU. Now we get to Duke and Northwestern, and you know I'm a Big Ten guy, so I am going to have to go Northwestern. As much as I want to go Duke, because Malik Murphy did look pretty darn good in their first game, even though he did throw an interception. But I'm going to have to go Northwestern.
I'm taking Duke. I mentioned that earlier, so I'm going to take the Blue Devils.
And then the last ACC game we're doing is a team that just got ranked, Georgia Tech and Syracuse.
Yellow Jackets.
Keeping it easy. Give me the Ramblin' Wreck.
Okay.
Now we get to the Big Ten. Where is it? Right there. We know who's going to win, and Indiana should win. Bowling Green, Penn State.
But do you think that we underestimated Penn State last week? Because they played a heck of a game against West Virginia, and they showed what kind of team they can be. As a Big Ten, you're a Big Ten guy, so you tell me. Because I'm an SEC guy more than I am Big Ten. Do you believe in their hype? Do you believe that they're going to be in Indianapolis at the end of the year in the Big Ten championship game?
It's going to take a couple more wins for me to buy in all the way to Penn State, because I've fallen for this trick one too many times. I've bought into the hype the last 2 years on Penn State, and it ends up blowing up in my face. So I'm a little cautious. But if I see it again this week and then next week, then yes, I'm going to fully buy it. But the problem is they play Ohio State, and they're probably going to get crunched by Ohio State. The way Ohio State looked this week 1. But I'm taking – there's absolutely zero chance I'm taking Bowling Green. Give me Penn State.
Me too. And they're at home in Happy Valley. Yeah, that's hard. That's hard to win.
The battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. Iowa State, Iowa. I am taking Iowa State in the upset.
Okay, Big 12. Okay.
Who are
I'm
you
going to
going?
I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes. Again, they're like I said, we talked, I think, in our first show about them that they're like the mosquito that just will not go away. You keep swatting them and they keep coming back. So I'll take the Hawkeyes at home.
And then we just talked about this one a few minutes ago. And one of these guys in this game was my player to watch. Kansas and Illinois.
Give me the Jayhawks.
I'm going to say the same thing. Give me Kansas. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Sorry, Illinois fans. We will talk about Nebraska, Colorado later. So we have a whole segment dedicated to just talking about Colorado. And how anemic they looked. So now we get to the Big 12. And we are going to do Arkansas, Oklahoma State. And I'm going to say something before we give our picks for this game. I think we both underestimated Mike Gundy last week.
That's another team, Bud, that I had in my notes too, that just like with Penn State, they're going to beat Arkansas. And I forget who Arkansas's head coach is now, but he came into the year on the hot seat as it is now. And I think
Sam Pittman.
Yeah, he's going to be out at the end of the year, before the end of the year. Give me the Cowboys at home.
Give me Oklahoma State. And I think both of us have learned now, don't underestimate Mike Gundy.
They could be Big 12 champions at the end of the year. Yeah.
Tulane and Kansas State. And yes, I was right. This game is at Tulane. I feel like you're going to take Tulane.
No, you know what? I was going to, but you know what? I'm going to take Kansas State. I'm going to go against the American. I'm going to go with Kansas State.
I am too, but it's for a different reason. I like Kansas State. I think they're going to win this game. I think their quarterback, Avery Johnson, is going to have a big game against Tulane's defense. And then our last Big 12 game is Baylor and Utah. This is the easiest pick of the show. Utah.
Yeah, so give me the Utes. I had them as one of my surprise teams this year. I think they're going to be there with Oklahoma State at the end of the year for the Big 12 championship.
That's where I have to disagree. I don't think it's going to be Oklahoma State. And I might rue the day I said that, because I don't know if any of these college kids watch the podcast, but I said it's going to be Arizona and Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm sticking to for right now, but I feel like I'm underestimating Mike Gundy, and I feel like it's going to backfire. First AAC game we're going to do is Troy and Memphis.
Give me the Tigers.
Give me Memphis. Florida Atlantic and Army.
I'm taking, give me Army. First, they're going to win their first conference game.
Give me Army. And then Of course. We're going to do it. Because I know who we're both going to pick. South Florida and Alabama.
Yeah, my heart tells me to take USF, but my brain tells me to take Alabama. I'm taking Bama. I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people predict it to be. But dude, honestly, I would love to come on here next Tuesday celebrating a USF win. That would be great. I just don't know. And I could be wrong. Coach Golish talked in the post-game press conference that, yeah, they look ready. They're hungry. They look ready to play. Alabama takes them too lightly. We'll be talking about a USF win next week.
My same thing. My heart says take USF, but my brain's telling me you got to take Bama. And I get slack from Bama fans all the time because of how much I despise them because of when Saban was there. So, and then now we finish up with my co-host favorite conference,
the SEC. But did you watch College Game Day? Did you hear what Nick Saban said? Did you see the comment that he said? They were making a comment about paying players $20 million. He goes,
yes. Yeah. Yes, I did.
Kirk Herbstreit's response was absolutely pandemonium for TV. I'm like, that was the greatest comeback. You just broke the internet. I'm like, how Nick Saban's been on 2 College Game Days? He's already broke the internet already on College Game Day. But go ahead and go with our SEC picks. But I found that absolutely funny.
I was at work and I started laughing when I heard that. Michigan, Texas.
I'm taking the blue. I'm taking Michigan on. They're at home. I know they're having quarterback issues, but they're going to put enough pressure on Texas and Ewers. I think he's going to make the mistake. Michigan will win.
Give me Texas, even though I think Michigan covers. And see, this is what I mean about the SEC. Look who A&M plays. Look who Georgia plays. Cupcake. But we're going to do Cal and Auburn. Give me Auburn.
Yeah, give me the Tigers too. That's another team that I think coming into, when the SEC was split in West and East, Auburn always gave fits with the West. So I like the Tigers, and they're at home as well. Cal's got to come all the way across the country to Alabama. I like Auburn.
South Carolina and Kentucky. I talked about this earlier, if you recall. I don't think Kentucky is ready.
Give me the Gamecocks on the road. I'll take South Carolina.
I'm going to say this before I make my pick. Like I said a minute ago, I don't think Kentucky is completely ready for the duo of Nick Harbor and Lenore Sellers. Give me South Carolina. Oh, and I forgot that South Carolina also has a former Arkansas running back in Rocket Raheem Sanders. So give me South Carolina. And now we are going to do our top 8 games for week number 2. And I will let you give yours first.
Okay. Top 8. All right. So let's see here. Some of the ones that we haven't talked about, because we talked about a bunch of them. I'm going to go with the SEC. I'm going to go. Let's see here. Not really a lot of good games in the SEC this week. You know what? Let me take Vandy over Alcorn State. You know what? I'll take that as my number 8. You know what? I'll take Vandy. I think Vandy had showed us a little bit last week that we weren't ready for. And again, they got a third-string quarterback. And before I go into, I want to congratulate my co-host on getting credentials to Virginia Tech. That's awesome. He will definitely enjoy that. I get that pleasure with USF, and it is so cool to be in the press box at a college football game, and you get the best view in the world, and you get, fed, parking, all that stuff is free. So congratulations to him on that one, on him getting that.
Thank you for that little vote of confidence.
My number 7 game, Ole Miss and Middle Tennessee State. I'll take that one. Ole Miss all the way. Miami is at home against Florida A&M. The Rattlers don't lose games, boys. They only lost 1 game last year to the USF. Look out, maybe an upset, maybe brewing in Miami. FAMU goes down there and takes care of Miami. Tennessee. What you talked about Tennessee NC State, right? You said you like the Wolfpack. I'll take that game too, bud. I'll take, because I despise Tennessee. I'll take the Wolfpack in that one. Clemson's playing Appalachian State.
I'm going to say something. Watch out for App State.
Well, yeah, because
they have the tendency
to upset teams.
Sneaky and upset teams. They did it to Michigan.
Well, how about this one? How about Boise State on the road in Eugene? Oregon didn't look too good last week.
No, they sleptwalked their way through that game with Idaho.
Yeah, I like Boise State. And then my last game, USC and Utah State, the Trojans. Yeah, I'll take that as my number 1.
My number 8 game is the game I will be at, and I have media credentials, as my co-host just said, to sit in the press box. Marshall at Virginia Tech. And I truthfully think it's going to be a really good game. But there's a few other games that are going to be good. So that's why it's at number 8. Number 7, and we just made a pick for this game a minute ago. K-State, Tulane. Big, huge non-conference game for Tulane. If they can beat Kansas State, they might put themselves in a good spot to be a participant in the college football playoff. My number 6 game, it's another game we just made a pick for. It is Iowa State and Iowa. The weirdest rivalry game name. It's a battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. I don't understand where they got the name from, but nevertheless, I think it's going to be maybe one of the best games of week 2. My number 5 game is Auburn and Cal. This was a close game last year when Cal was still a member of the Pac-12 at the time. As we know now, Cal is now in the ACC. I think Auburn and Cal are going to put up a lot of points. I think it's going to be a good game. My number 4 game, and I think my co-host is going to like this. It is South Florida at Alabama. I think it's going to be a really good game because I think, like my co-host mentioned a minute ago, USF is hungry. They want to prove. They should have been one of the teams chosen for conference realignment. My number 3 game is Tennessee versus NC State in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I've said this about every other game. I think this is going to be a good game. Number 2, I know it's probably going to be a boring game because Kansas is probably going to put up 50. Kansas, Illinois. And then I'm going to round it out with the big one at the Big House, where College Game Day is unfortunately going to be this week. Texas, Michigan. I think it's going to be a really good game. And now we get to the final part of the show, and we are going to first talk about Colorado and how do we put it? They won, but they slid by North Dakota State. Very much slid by. I'll say this. I'm going to give 3 bullet points from the Colorado North Dakota State game. The first one is Colorado's wide receivers are good. Not just Travis Hunter. That catch that Travis Hunter made for the touchdown was disgusting. But Jimmy Horn, if this name doesn't ring a bell to USF fans, I hope it does. Jimmy Horn Jr. What a game he had. 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. The one thing so there's 2 and Shedeur played really good too, for the most part, other than the few times he got pressure. But now, so there's always 2 sides to every game. Now, let's look at the bad side. The offensive line. The offensive line for Colorado still worries me a lot. I'm still scared for Shedeur. The fact that the offensive line, he was still getting hit on a reasonable number of plays. And then what's this talk I heard about Colorado's defense getting better? They got shredded. They got shredded for, I think it's 300 or 400 yards passing by the North Dakota State quarterback. What are your takeaways from the Colorado game?
Well, I mean, if you look, guys, the FCS teams, I think, are getting closer, and you could see it not only in this game, in the NC State game as well. These teams are getting closer. I mean, I know a lot of times, and we all know in college football that these FBS teams pay these teams to come and play them. USF is one of those teams that, we're playing Alabama and Texas and all these teams, the Gators and all that stuff. So, we get paid. What they do is they sometimes, and in the past, it was just a beat up game, or as my co-host would say, it's a cupcake type of matchup. I think these programs are getting better, and I think the FBS needs to be a little bit scared about who they schedule. Colorado almost got an upset, and I'm not going to sit here and dog on Deion, but he's got to do something. Like Alex said, the offensive line is horrendous. And I don't care if you have the greatest quarterback ever to play the game. If you don't have an offensive line, you're not going to win football games. Your quarterback's going to get hurt. He's going to take too many shots. So, and just like he said, too, the defense was horrible. North Dakota State, again, almost won the football game. When I watched it last week, it was a back and forth game. Colorado would score, and North Dakota State would come right back and score again. So there was no stoppage or anything like that. So Colorado needs to find something, because it's going to be a long season. And again, the way things are going right now, would it be interesting if FSU has a bad season and they fire Norvell, and then Colorado has a bad season and Deion goes back to FSU? Because that's the way it seems like it's going to be playing out right now if Colorado doesn't get any better after. But yeah, and you know what? We all sit here and dog on Nebraska. I think I had Nebraska's quarterback last week in our players to watch. Don't be surprised if Nebraska doesn't beat them or gives them a ball game this Saturday.
I would agree, and let's give a semi-preview of Nebraska-Colorado. These two teams played last year, and I would say it was a relatively good game, but I'm right there with you. I don't think I'd be surprised if Colorado ends up getting beat. And this is another game between two teams that I have ranked in my rankings. but I'm very, very wary, very, very scared about Colorado getting upset here. Very much. And for those people that don't know, if you want to see my rankings, they're up on my YouTube community polls. You can tell me what teams I missed out on, what teams shouldn't be ranked. But, and then the other game we're going to preview is Michigan and Texas. I think, and I want to know what you think, I think this might be the game of the week. Honestly. I know most people say that it's Nebraska, Colorado.
Well, don't count out the Iowa State game either. Again, it's a battle for a trophy. Those games are always interesting, but I would have to agree with you. But I think the most eyeballs are going to be on the Michigan-Texas game, being that you have the defending national champions against a team that's coming into the SEC this year. So, yeah, I would agree that it could be the game of the week. And I'm going to watch the USF game at a USF watch party. I think the Michigan game is on before. Are they on at 3? What time does that game kick off? Or is it a night game too?
No, it's a noon. I think it's noon.
Oh, it's a noon. Okay, so I'll get to watch it before I go to the. Okay,
I'll get to watch a little bit of it before I go over to Virginia before I go to the Va-Tech game.
Cool.
But let's give score predictions for those two games. I think you'll be surprised. I think Nebraska is going to beat Colorado 35-21. I think Dylan Raiola carves and picks apart that Colorado defense.
I'm going to go to
I do have Colorado as one of my upsets in another video I'm doing. So, but I do think this, like we've been saying, this is going to be a good game. These are just score predictions. But go ahead.
I was going to say, but I'm going to double it up. I'm going to say Nebraska 42, Colorado 21. I think, like you said, I think the problem that Colorado is going to have is stopping Nebraska on defense. I think they score 6 touchdowns. I think it's 42-21 is the final.
And then Michigan, Texas. I'll let you go first with your score prediction.
I think this game is going to be close because both teams have good defenses. Both teams also have, again, I know the Michigan struggled last week with their quarterback. They got a good running game, and they're at home, which if this was in Austin, it'd be a little bit different with the weather being warmer in Texas than it is in Michigan at the current moment. But I like Michigan, and I'm going to say this. I think it's going to be very close. I'm going to go 24-21 Wolverines.
Okay, I'm going to go 48-45 Texas. But like I said, I think Michigan does cover. And I think that's a wrap on the podcast for tonight. There will be no podcast the rest of the week, as I will be, as most of y'all know, I will be in Virginia for the Virginia Tech Marshall game. I will be doing vlogs that whole time I'm there, but the podcast will be back next Tuesday. For Bradley and Alec, we are signing off for the night. We will see you next Tuesday.
Have a good night, guys.